always thought I knew my wife, Claire. After 12 years of marriage, 2 kids, and a life built together in the quiet suburbs of Maplewood, I believed we were a unit, imperfect, sure, but solid. She was the one who laughed at my terrible puns, who remembered to buy my favorite coffee beans when I forgot, who held my hand through the sleepless nights when our daughter, Lily, was born premature. Claire was my anchor, my partner, my home. But anchors can slip, and homes can hide cracks in their foundations. That's what I learned the day I found out about her betrayal. It was a Tuesday in early spring, the kind of day where the air smells like wet grass and possibility. I'd been working from home, a perk of my job as a data analyst for a tech firm. My office was a cramped corner of our basement, surrounded by boxes of Christmas decorations and Lily's old baby clothes we couldn't bear to give away. I'd been slogging through spreadsheets, my eyes glazing over numbers, when my phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Asterisk, running late at work. Can you pick up the kids from school? Dinner's in the fridge. Asterisk. Nothing unusual there. Claire worked as a marketing manager for a local ad agency, and her hours could stretch when deadlines loomed. I replied with a quick no problem, love you, and went back to my data. But something nagged at me, a faint itch I couldn't scratch. Maybe it was the way her texts had been shorter lately, less warm, or how she'd been spending more time on her phone, smiling at the screen when she thought I wasn't looking. I brushed it off. Marriage is a long game. You don't sweat every flicker of doubt. The kids, Lily, 9, and Max, 6, were a whirlwind of energy when I picked them up. Lily was chattering about her science project, something about volcanoes, while Max demanded we stop for ice cream. I indulged them. Partly because I'm a pushover. Partly because Claire wasn't there to give me her playful, "You're spoiling them" look. We got home, ate the lasagna she'd left, and I helped with homework before tucking them into bed. Claire still wasn't home. By 10 o'clock, I texted her, "Everything okay?" No response. I wasn't worried, not exactly, but I couldn't shake that itch. I opened my laptop, intending to distract myself with work, but instead I found myself staring at our shared calendar. Claire's schedule was meticulous: client meetings, gym sessions, book club. But there was a new entry I hadn't noticed. Team drinks, 6 p.m. Odd, because she hadn't mentioned drinks. I checked her texts again, then her email, which we both had access to for shared bills. Nothing about team drinks. The itch grew sharper. I'm not proud of what I did next. I opened the app we used to track each other's locations, a holdover from when Lily wandered off at the mall a few years back. Claire's dot was nowhere near her office downtown. It was at a bar on the edge of town, a place called the Rusty Anchor. I stared at the dot, my stomach twisting. Why would she lie about drinks? Why not just tell me? I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the team had picked a new spot. Maybe her phone's GPS was glitchy. But the itch was a claw now, digging into my chest. I called my sister, Jen, who lived 10 minutes away and could watch the kids. "Just need to run an errand," I said, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. Jen didn't ask questions, bless her. The Rusty Anchor was a dive, all dim lights and sticky floors. I parked across the street, my heart thudding like I was some amateur detective in a bad movie. I didn't go in right away. I sat in my car, watching the entrance, telling myself I was being ridiculous. Claire was probably inside with her colleagues, laughing about some client's absurd demands. But then I saw her. She stepped out of the bar, her hair catching the neon glow of the sign. She was wearing that black dress I loved, the one she said made her feel like she could conquer the world. And she wasn't alone. A man was with her, tall, broad-shouldered, with a smug grin I wanted to wipe off his face. They were close, too close. His hand rested on her lower back, guiding her toward a sleek black car parked a few spaces down. I knew that car. It belonged to Ryan, her coworker, the guy who always lingered too long at company parties, who called her Claire Bear, like it was cute and not infuriating. I watched, frozen, as she laughed at something he said, her head tilting the way it did when she was genuinely happy. They got into his car, and my world tilted. I followed them, keeping my distance, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. They drove to a motel, one of those cheap places with flickering signs and peeling paint. I parked across the lot, my breath shallow, as they walked into a room together. The door closed behind them, and I felt something inside me crack. I didn't confront them, couldn't. My mind was a storm of questions and rage and disbelief, but I drove home, my vision blurring. Jen was still there, reading on the couch. "You okay?" she asked, her brow furrowing. I nodded, mumbled something about a long day, and she left. Upstairs, I checked on the kids, their soft breaths grounding me just enough to keep from shattering. I sat on the edge of our bed, our bed, and waited. Claire came home at 1:17 a.m. I heard the front door creak, her footsteps light, like she was trying not to wake me. She slipped into the bedroom, smelling faintly of wine and something else, something musky I didn't want to name. "Hey," she whispered, seeing me awake. "Why, you still up?" "Couldn't sleep," I said, my voice flat. "How was work?" She hesitated just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. "Oh, same old chaos. Big pitch tomorrow, so we had drinks to unwind." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She kissed my forehead, quick and perfunctory, and went to change. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, her lie burning in my chest. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions. Work, kids, dinner, but every moment was colored by what I'd seen. I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed proof, something undeniable, because part of me still hoped I was wrong. I started paying closer attention. Her phone was locked now, a new development. She was cagey about her schedule, vague about her day. And then there were the late nights, more frequent, always with an excuse. A project, a client, a team thing. I became a man I didn't recognize. I checked her email when she was in the shower, found nothing but work stuff. I scrolled through her texts when she left her phone on the counter, but she deleted most of her conversations with Ryan. I even drove by her office one evening when she said she was working late. Her car wasn't there. The rusty Anchor was, and so was Ryan's black sedan. I hired a private investigator. Felt like a cliché, but I was desperate for the truth. His name was Frank, a grizzled guy with a voice like gravel and eyes that had seen too much. I gave him what I knew: Claire's schedule, Ryan's name, the motel. He didn't sugarcoat things. "If she's stepping out, I'll find out," he said. "But you sure you want to know?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure at all. A week later, Frank sent me a file. Photos of Claire and Ryan, grainy but unmistakable. Them at the bar, her hand on his arm. Them at the motel, his lips on her neck. A time-stamped receipt from a coffee shop they'd gone to one morning, when she told me she was at yoga. And worst of all, a recording of a phone call intercepted somehow. Frank didn't explain, and I didn't ask. Claire's voice, soft and teasing, saying things to Ryan I hadn't heard from her in years. I sat in my basement office, the kids asleep upstairs, and stared at the evidence. My marriage, my life was a lie. Claire wasn't just unfaithful. She was building a whole other world with this man, one where I didn't exist. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was emotional, intimate, a theft of everything I thought we were. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just felt cold, like something vital had been carved out of me. I started planning. Not confrontation, not yet. I needed to be smart, to protect myself and the kids. I met with a lawyer quietly to understand my options. I moved money into a separate account, small amounts so Claire wouldn't notice. I documented everything. Frank's file, her lies, her absences. And I watched her, living with her like nothing was wrong, kissing her goodnight while my mind churned with what I knew. It was torture, but it gave me clarity. Claire thought she could have it all: her family, her lover, her secrets. She thought I was oblivious, the dutiful husband who'd never suspect. She was wrong. I wasn't going to let her betrayal destroy me or our kids. I was going to make her feel the weight of what she'd done, not with violence or shouting, but with something sharper, something that would cut deeper than she could imagine. The first step was understanding her world with Ryan. I needed to know how far it went, how long it had been going on, who else knew. I kept Frank on retainer, digging deeper. I started noticing things at home. Ryan's name dropped casually in conversation. A new necklace Claire wore that I hadn't bought. A faint shift in her perfume. Every detail was a knife, but I collected them, building a case not for a courtroom, but for something more personal. I didn't sleep much those weeks. I'd lie awake, listening to Claire's breathing, wondering how she could be so calm, so normal, while tearing our life apart. I thought about the kids, about Lily's science projects and Max's obsession with dinosaurs. They didn't deserve this. Neither did I. But deserving doesn't stop the world from turning, and it wouldn't stop what was coming. By the end of that month, I had a plan. It wasn't about divorce papers or public shaming, though those were tempting. It was about dismantling Claire's carefully constructed world, piece by piece, in a way she'd never see coming. She'd betrayed me, but I wasn't going to be the one left broken. I'd make sure she understood the cost of her choices, and I'd do it with a precision she'd never expect from the man she thought she knew. The weeks after I confirmed Claire's betrayal were a masterclass in self-control. Every smile I gave her, every "how was your day?" was a performance, a mask I wore to keep her oblivious while I built my case. I wasn't just gathering evidence anymore. I was laying the foundation for something bigger, something that would make her feel the same gut-wrenching betrayal I did. The private investigator, Frank, was worth his weight in gold. His reports were clinical, detached, but each one was a fresh wound. Claire and Ryan at a cafe, laughing over lattes. Claire slipping into his car after work, her hand brushing his. A text exchange Frank intercepted where she called him babe and promised to make time for him. I stored it all, not just in files but in my mind, a growing ledger of her deceit. I started to see Claire differently. She was still beautiful, her auburn hair catching the morning light, her laugh when Max did something silly, but it was tainted now. Every gesture felt calculated, every touch a lie. She'd come home late, claiming a deadline, and I'd nod, kiss her cheek, and say, "Hope it went well." She'd smile, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I wasn't just angry, I was resolute. She'd taken something from me. Trust, love, the illusion of our life together, and I was going to take something back. The first step was understanding Ryan. Who was this man who thought he could step into my life? Frank dug into his background. Ryan Mitchell, 38, divorced, no kids. He was a senior account executive at Claire's agency, charming in that polished way that made people like him without trying too hard. Social media showed him at charity runs, posing with colleagues, always with a grin that screamed confidence. I hated him, but I didn't let that cloud my thinking. Hate is messy. I needed precision. I started small, testing the waters. I knew Claire and Ryan were meeting regularly at the Rusty Anchor, so I asked Frank to get me more details. He tailed them for a week, mapping their routine. Tuesdays and Thursdays, they'd meet at the bar around 6 p.m., stay for an hour, then head to the motel. Sometimes they'd grab coffee the next morning at a place called Brood Awakening, a trendy spot downtown. Frank got me photos, timestamps, even a receipt from the motel showing Ryan's credit card. It was a pattern, predictable and careless. They thought they were untouchable. I decided to infiltrate their world, not directly, but close enough to rattle them. I created a fake social media profile, an alias, Mark Thompson, with a generic photo and just enough activity to seem real. I followed Ryan's public accounts, liked a few of his posts, and joined a local networking group he was part of. I didn't interact directly, but I watched. He posted about work wins, tagged Claire in a group photo from a team outing, captioned it, "Best crew in the biz." She commented with a heart emoji. My stomach churned, but I saved the screenshot. Next, I started planting seeds. Claire's agency was hosting a client event, a big deal for their annual campaign. I knew Ryan would be there, and so would Claire. I called her office one afternoon, pretending to be a vendor confirming details for the event. The receptionist was chatty, gave me the venue, a swanky hotel downtown, and mentioned the team was super excited about the new campaign Ryan was leading. I thanked her, hung up, and made a note. The event was in 2 weeks. Perfect. I didn't just want to catch them. I wanted to expose them in a way that hurt. I started digging into Ryan's life beyond Claire. Frank found out he was dating someone else, a woman named Sarah, a paralegal he'd met through a dating app. They weren't exclusive, but she thought they were serious. Frank got me her contact info and proof of their dates, dinner receipts, photos of them at a comedy club. Ryan was playing both women, and I saw an opportunity. Sarah could be a wild card, someone who'd feel as betrayed as I did. I reached out to Sarah as Mark Thompson, claiming to be a friend of Ryan's who'd heard he was seeing someone special. I was careful, friendly, dropping hints about his busy schedule and other commitments. She was cautious but curious, asking what I meant. I sent her a cropped photo from Frank's file, just Ryan at the Rusty Anchor, no Claire. Saw him here last week, I wrote. Looked cozy with someone. Just thought you should know. She didn't respond, but I knew I'd planted a seed. Meanwhile, I kept up appearances at home. Claire was none the wiser, still coming home late, still kissing me goodnight like nothing was wrong. But I noticed cracks in her facade. She was jumpier, checking her phone more often, snapping at the kids over small things. Once, when I asked about her day, she flinched before answering, like she'd forgotten her script. I didn't push. I wanted her to feel safe to keep making mistakes. I also started preparing the kids, subtly. Lily and Max didn't need to know the truth, but I needed them to be ready for change. I spent more time with them, taking them to the park, helping with homework, teaching Max how to ride his bike without training wheels. I wanted them to feel secure with me, to know I was their constant. Claire noticed, commented on how hands-on I was being. I just smiled and said, "They're growing up fast." She didn't push, but I saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes. The client event was my first big move. I told Claire I had a work trip that weekend, a lie to get me out of the house. I booked a hotel room across town and went to the event as Mark Thompson, using a fake ID Frank helped me get. The venue was packed, suits, dresses, clinking glasses. I spotted Claire immediately, radiant in a navy gown, her arm linked with Ryan's as they mingled. They looked like a couple, confident and untouchable. I stayed in the shadows, sipping a drink, watching. I'd paid a waiter to slip a note to Sarah, who I'd learned was attending as Ryan's +1. The note was simple. *, meet me by the fountain at 9 p.m. I have something about Ryan you need to see. *, I'd signed it, a friend. At 9, I watched from a distance as Sarah, a petite woman with sharp eyes, approached the fountain. I didn't show myself. Instead, I'd left an envelope there, containing photos of Ryan and Claire at the motel, their faces clear. I'd blurred Claire's face slightly, not out of kindness, but to keep the focus on Ryan. I wanted Sarah to confront him, to stir the pot. She found the envelope, read the note inside, and flipped through the photos. Her face crumpled, then hardened. She stormed back into the event, and I followed at a distance. I saw her pull Ryan aside, her voice low but furious. Claire was across the room, chatting with a client, oblivious. Ryan's face went pale, his hands gesturing wildly as he tried to explain. Sarah slapped him hard enough that heads turned. Claire froze, her eyes darting to them, then away. I slipped out before anyone noticed me. The next day, Claire was quiet at home, her phone buzzing constantly. She didn't mention the event, but I saw the strain in her eyes. I asked casually, "How was the party?" She shrugged, said it was fine, just work stuff. I nodded, hiding my satisfaction. Sarah's reaction had shaken Ryan, and I knew it would ripple to Claire. I checked my fake account later. Sarah had blocked Ryan on social media. Good. One crack in their world. I wasn't done. I started targeting Claire's professional life. Her agency was competitive, and she'd always been ambitious. I knew her boss, Linda, valued loyalty and results. I sent an anonymous email to Linda, using a burner account, hinting that Claire and Ryan were distracted by personal matters, attaching a vague but suggestive photo of them at the bar. I didn't accuse outright. I let Linda's imagination do the work. Frank later confirmed Linda had called them both in for a meeting, her tone sharp. Claire came home that night complaining about office politics, her voice tight. I listened, sympathetic, while my mind churned with the next step. I also started building my own life quietly. I joined a gym not to impress anyone but to feel strong, in control. I reconnected with old friends, guys I'd drifted from during the marriage. I even started therapy, telling Claire it was for work stress. Really, it was to keep myself grounded, to process the rage and hurt without letting it consume me. The therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Patel, didn't push me to forgive or move on. She just listened, helping me sharpen my focus. By now, Claire and Ryan were more cautious. Frank reported fewer motel visits, more daytime meetings at coffee shops. They were spooked, but not enough to stop. I upped the ante. I hacked into Ryan's work email. Not hard. His password was his dog's name and birth year, per Frank's intel. I found emails between him and Claire, not explicit but intimate, full of inside jokes and plans. I forwarded a few to Sarah from another burner account, adding a note. "He's still lying to you." She didn't respond, but I knew she'd act. The final piece of this phase was personal. I invited Claire's book club to our house, something I'd never done. I played the doting husband, serving wine and snacks, charming her friends. I dropped subtle hints. How proud I was of Claire's work, how she was always so busy lately. Her friends exchanged glances. One, Emily, asked pointedly if Claire was still close with Ryan. Claire laughed it off, but her eyes were nervous. I'd sown doubt among her circle, and I knew they'd talk. By the end of that month, Claire was unraveling. She was short-tempered, distracted, checking her phone obsessively. Ryan was under pressure too. Sarah had confronted him again, and Linda was watching him closely at work. Their perfect little affair was fraying, and I hadn't even revealed myself yet. I was patient, meticulous, waiting for the moment to strike. The kids were my anchor, their laughter keeping me human. But Claire? She was about to learn what it meant to lose everything she thought she controlled. The air in our house felt heavier as the weeks passed, like the tension before a storm breaks. Claire was a shadow of her usual self, snapping at the kids, distracted during dinner, her smiles forced and fleeting. I played my part flawlessly, the supportive husband, oblivious to her crumbling world. Inside, I was a furnace of resolve, my plan nearing its crescendo. I'd spent months dismantling Claire's affair with Ryan piece by piece, sowing discord with Sarah, planting doubts at her workplace, and unsettling her social circle. Now it was time to deliver the final blow, a revenge so precise, so devastating, that she'd feel the weight of her betrayal for years. I'd learned from Frank that Claire and Ryan were still meeting, though their encounters were less frequent, more secretive. They'd switched to a different motel, a rundown place called the Starlight Inn, and their coffee shop trysts had moved to odd hours, early mornings or late afternoons when they thought no one would notice. But I noticed. Frank's reports were meticulous. Timestamps, photos, even a recording of a hushed argument in Ryan's car, where Claire said, "This is getting too risky." Ryan's response was smug. "We're fine, Claire Bear. No one knows." I wanted to reach through the recording and choke him. Instead, I channeled that rage into my plan. The centerpiece was Claire's annual performance review at the agency, scheduled for mid-May. It was a big deal, her chance to pitch for a promotion to director, a goal she'd been chasing for years. I knew from Frank's intel that her boss, Linda, was already skeptical, thanks to my anonymous email about Claire's distractions. I decided to amplify that doubt. I created another burner account, this time posing as a concerned colleague, and sent Linda a dossier of carefully curated evidence. Blurred photos of Claire and Ryan at the Rusty Anchor, snippets of their flirty emails, stripped of anything too explicit to avoid legal trouble, and a timeline of their absences from work that matched their motel visits. I framed it as a warning about unprofessional behavior impacting the team. Linda wouldn't fire Claire outright. She was too valuable, but it would stall her career, a blow to her ambition she'd feel deeply. Next, I turned to Ryan's life. Sarah, his other girlfriend, was already volatile after my earlier nudges. I sent her one final package from my alias, Mark Thompson. A USB drive with a video Frank had captured of Ryan and Claire entering the motel, timestamped, with a note saying, "He's never going to choose you." I didn't care about Sarah's feelings. She was a means to an end. 2 days later, Frank reported that Sarah had shown up at Ryan's apartment, screaming in the parking lot. She'd keyed his car and posted a cryptic rant on social media about liars and cheaters. Ryan was rattled, and Claire, I noticed, was checking her phone obsessively, her face pale. But the real strike was personal. I wanted Claire to lose not just her lover, not just her career momentum, but the life she thought she controlled. The one where she could betray me and still come home to our kids, our house, our facade of a perfect family. I started by shifting the dynamic at home. I'd always been the steady one, handling school runs and bedtime stories, but now I leaned into it harder. I took Lily and Max on weekend trips, camping, museums, a dinosaur exhibit Max loved, building memories without Claire. When she asked to join, I'd say, "You've got work, don't you? We'll be fine." Her eyes would flicker with guilt, but she didn't push. I also weaponized her social circle. Her book club, her gym buddies, her work friends, they all loved me. I'd charm them with small gestures. Hosting a barbecue, dropping off cookies at the gym, sending thoughtful texts about their kids or jobs. I'd drop subtle comments about Claire's stress, her late nights, how I was holding down the fort. They started asking her questions. I could tell. Her friend Emily texted me privately, asking if Claire was okay, saying she seemed off. I played concerned husband, saying I was worried too but didn't want to pry. The seeds of doubt I'd planted were blooming. Her friends were pulling away, isolating her without her realizing why. The kids were my priority. I didn't want them caught in the crossfire, but I needed them protected. I met with my lawyer again, finalizing a custody plan that favored me heavily. I had Frank's evidence, my documentation of Claire's absences, and character references from neighbors and Jen. If it came to divorce, I'd fight for primary custody, not out of spite but because I didn't trust Claire to put Lily and Max first. She'd already proven she could lie to me. I wouldn't let her neglect them. The final act came together on the night of Claire's performance review. I knew she'd be at the agency late, preparing. I also knew Ryan was meeting her there, based on a text Frank intercepted. "After your review, let's celebrate. Starlight Inn, 8 p.m. I saw my opening. I arranged for Jen to watch the kids, claiming I had a work dinner. Instead, I drove to the agency, parking in a lot across the street. I'd hired a courier, a kid Frank recommended, to deliver an envelope to Linda during Claire's review. The envelope contained a single photo, Claire and Ryan kissing outside the motel, her face unblurred this time, along with a note. "Is this the leadership you're promoting?" I didn't sign it. I watched from my car as the courier slipped into the building. 20 minutes later, Claire stormed out, her face red, tears streaming. Ryan followed, trying to grab her arm, but she shook him off. I couldn't hear their words, but her body language screamed fury. She got into her car and sped off. Ryan stood there, looking lost before driving away. I followed Claire, not to confront her but to see where she'd go. She didn't head to the motel or Ryan's place. She drove home. I waited an hour before returning. When I walked in, Claire was on the couch, a glass of wine in her hand, her eyes swollen. "Hey," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Rough day." She looked at me, her mouth opening, then closing. "I didn't get the promotion," she said finally, her voice hollow. "Linda said I've been distracted, unreliable." She laughed bitterly. "Me, unreliable." I sat across from her, feigning concern. "That's rough. What happened?" She shook her head, sipping her wine. "Just office stuff. It's fine." But it wasn't fine. I could see the cracks in her composure, the fear that her carefully curated life was slipping away. I didn't push. I let her stew in it. The next day, I got a call from Frank. Linda had put Claire on a performance improvement plan, a humiliating step for someone of her caliber. Ryan was on thin ice too, demoted to a smaller account after Sarah's public meltdown reached their colleagues. Claire's friends were gossiping. Emily texted me again, asking if Claire was having an affair. I didn't confirm, just said, "I'm worried about her too." The rumor mill was churning, and Claire was losing her grip on her world. I saved the final blow for our anniversary. We'd planned a quiet dinner at home, a tradition. I cooked her favorite, roasted lamb with rosemary, and set the table with candles. The kids were with Jen for the night. Claire was subdued, still reeling from work, but she tried to play the loving wife, thanking me for the meal, kissing me softly. I smiled, poured her wine, and waited until dessert. "I got you something," I said, sliding a small box across the table. Her eyes lit up, expecting jewelry. She opened it to find a USB drive. "What's this?" she asked, confused. "Play it," I said, my voice calm but cold. She hesitated, then plugged it into her laptop. The screen filled with Frank's footage. Her and Ryan at the motel, the bar, the coffee shop. Her laughter, his hand on her back, their stolen moments. Her face went white, her hands shaking. Where did you get this?" "I know everything, Claire," I said, leaning back in my chair. "For months, I've watched you lie, sneak around, betray me, betray our kids. And I'm done." She started crying, babbling apologies, excuses about stress and feeling trapped. I didn't interrupt. I let her unravel, her words spilling out like a confession to a priest. When she finished, I stood. "I'm not divorcing you yet," I said. "Not because I forgive you, but because I want you to live with this. You'll see the kids every day, knowing you broke their family. You'll go to work, knowing everyone whispers about you. You'll look at me, knowing I know who you really are." I walked out, leaving her sobbing at the table. I didn't sleep in our bed that night. I took the guest room, locking the door. The next morning, I was up early, making breakfast for the kids when they got back. Claire stayed in her room, claiming a headache. Lily asked why Mommy was sad. I hugged her and said, "She's just tired, sweetheart." But I knew Claire was awake, listening, drowning in her own guilt. My revenge wasn't loud or violent. It was surgical. I'd stripped away her lover, her career prospects, her social standing, and her self-image. She'd live with the consequences, not in a courtroom, but in the quiet moments. Every glance from a colleague, every whisper from a friend, every time she looked at me and saw the man she'd underestimated. The kids were my focus now, my reason to keep going. Claire could have her half-life, her shame. I was already building a new future, one where I'd never trust her again, but I'd be free.